Hey everybody, this is Zach, aka War Machine Suicide. Now, clean my screen. I want to bring up a couple things, actually, that seem a bit odd to me. How can I put this? A couple of concepts, especially in America. I'm sure it's worse a lot of other places, but I don't live in those other places. I live in Texas. I live in the United States. And these concepts seem like a double-edged sword here. The first one being justice. Now, how would we define justice? Would we define justice in the literal, Oxford Dictionary definition sense? Is that how we would define justice and keep it as such? Or how would you define justice? Justice can be a lot of different things, in my opinion. For example, there's always somebody that ends up getting murdered. It seems like nobody doing a motherfucking thing about it. And so, what do we want? We want justice for the victim. We want something to happen to the perpetrator. A lot of times on a lot of forums, that's rarely ever, go through the court system, have them, the person, in front of a jury of his peers, due process and the like, and hopefully found guilty and punished, either to the full extent of the law, which I'm sure everybody would hope for if that were the option that these people want. That's rarely the case. The only time I ever see anything about guilty or innocent until proven guilty usually comes from families of the perpetrator. Not really rational people, unfortunately. Usually the justice is on various platforms would be calling for the same thing to happen to them, or even worse, in prison. Now, that's how I see it, as a double-edged sword, for two reasons. Number one, obviously the justice system, as far as the legal system and courts in America, I mean, it's beyond obvious. A lot of it is pretty corrupt, and a lot of fucked up shit goes on. So there's that. So you can want justice, and you want the guy put away. Still going with my example, of course. You want the guy put away, to the fullest extent of the law, or as much as possible, unless they have some kind of deal with the DA. But that doesn't always happen. There's always corruption. People always talk about the police getting away with shit. That's not justice. Even if they're found guilty, or even if they're found not guilty, in a court of law by a jury of their peers. Now, that's the way that works in America. Sure, there are biased judges, juries, attorneys, and the like. But when it comes down to the other side, maybe this is like a triple-edged sword. Maybe it's like more than that. Because that's already a double-edged sword on that end. But on the other end, where everybody is calling for, again with the example of somebody murdered, they want the perpetrator dead. They want them to be like raped in prison and all the other shit that they're calling for something that they're not they haven't been proven guilty of. Now, say that everybody in the world knows that it's guilty. There's footage, there's sufficient evidence, blah, 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 and they're going to be put away. But people don't think that's justice. It's not just to them. And these are people that don't even have anything to do with anything of the case. It's just random people. If shit goes viral, you know, cut off their heads, fucking whatever, you know, they need to be shot and all this other stuff and shanked in prison, and hopefully they never get out alive, and that type of thing. Now, I can say that I'm guilty of those thoughts and saying those types of things as well, for different reasons, for different actions, etc. So how would we define justice? How could collectively the American people define justice? I mean, we're all so worried about presidential elections that those mass people that want to turn out for presidential elections have no idea that the change begins locally. I mean, it has to do with school boards, your local judges, you vote for your sheriffs, people. I mean, you got to think about that. You want to be some big person. I'm exercising my right to vote. Oh, this voter suppression because I'm trying to vote primaries and presidents and blah, 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 blah. Take it to the local level. I mean, you can't... I don't even know how to word this shit, man. I should have thought about it before I even just started this video. But I want to tell you instead what justice means to me. Justice means to me, say something were to happen to me, and I could easily use some personal examples, and I'm choosing not to for the sake of civility, because that's just me, okay? But say something happened to me, absolutely deplorable shit, just whatever. How would I define justice? Would I want somebody incarcerated? Or would I want something less than that? You know, that would be... It would still be like me taking a hit, like me still being... I don't know what the word is. I wouldn't say still a victim, make some kind of complex out of it. But if something were to happen to me, and I was just absolutely disgusting, what the fuck ever. I mean, I'm a fair guy. I think I'm a just guy. I would want what would be beneficial to everybody. I can actually give you an example of something that did happen. I was working out of town, staying in a place called Seminole. Now, the place that I was at was run by these two drug addicts that they eventually got fired for stealing money, people's rent money, and people were leaving because of that. Now, the cabin I was staying in, I thought it was not going to come back because that's what was told, but with my line of work, it's a bunch of fucking back and forth. That's all it was. Not to bash the company I was working for, but I mean, that's what it is, and that's the way with a lot of companies. It's just a bunch of back and forth. But with that being said, I had told them I'd probably not return, but my coworkers are supposed to come and get my things, and they said okay. Now, when I came back, I had clothes there. I had a few of my items there. I didn't have my Xbox there. I had my parts to my laptop that were still there. My Xbox 360 was stolen. A bunch of my Blu-rays were stolen. My Blu-ray player was stolen. And my clothes hamper was replaced with a smaller white one, the ones that got the holes in it and shit. Now, when I found out, I was infuriated, and I went to the people that were running it, and I was like, what the fuck? This is some bullshit. And like the guy next door to me was telling me that they let him go in to take a shower because his water wasn't working, and that was the truth. But they kept being extremely shady about, oh, we threw your stuff away, and then it turned into, we don't know nothing about nothing. And I was like, fuck these people. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would you like it if I stole your stuff? You probably fucking wouldn't. Would it be justice for me to go and steal their stuff? Maybe to some. Not for me. I ended up getting all the facts, calling the police like I should have, and it turned out that it was my next door neighbor that had stole my stuff. He had lied to me, but he came clean, and he told me that, the people running the place were like, well, stuff's there, he's gone anyway, so just take whatever the fuck you want. Well, except for the fact that they took stuff of mine too. And they were like, oh yeah, we were gonna go and clean it up and everything, and we figured that you probably would want to come back for some of this stuff. Bitch, don't fucking lie to me, dude. I mean, I wanted them to go to jail. I really did. Just for the sheer fact that they didn't even come clean about nothing. It was a lie from the get-go. She didn't want to say we threw her stuff away, except my stuff was still in there, a majority of my clothes. So how's it going to get thrown away? How's my expensive stuff going to get thrown away? Except the guy next door had my Xbox and knew that I was trying to find out what happened, bailed and threw it away, supposedly. And they have my Blu-ray and quite a bit of my movies and games. Justice for me, for them, was they eventually got found out and fired. The gentleman next door, again, he came clean, and he paid me restitution in the amount of $600 because I felt that was the minimum of what everything was taken from me, despite the people that ran the place taking stuff from me. No, it was more like, this is what this comes out to if it was brand new, right? And then let's tack on another couple $100 just for the sheer inconvenience of taking from me. And he agreed, and he paid, and he genuinely apologized, and I had to re-talk to the cops and say, don't press charges on this guy. He eventually came clean and was honest about it, and I believe genuinely that he felt bad. That would be justice for me in that type of scenario. I can't speak for all scenarios, but I feel like that was the right thing. Now, I don't think other people would have done that. I know we can get heated. Shit can get the better of us. And somebody would have, if they were in my shoes and not me, popped off on the people running the place, on the guy next door, just ended a life. Like, how is that justice? It's money. Shit can be rebought, especially type of money I was making at that point in time. It could have been rebought, but it didn't take away from the hours of the games and the movies that I had that were still gone. And it's like, that stuff meant something to me, because when you're working about, I don't know, 10, sometimes up to 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, and you only got a Sunday off. I mean, playing games and watching movies is like the only thing that I looked forward to. A lot of people that were in my line of work, all they would want to do is go out and drink. I don't look forward to that. That's not fun for me, especially if I got to work the next day. So I'm curious on how other people would define justice. Maybe in a scenario of their type or not, just anything given. Give your own examples of whatever, how this could be considered justice, how this could also be, but it's also a double-edged, triple-edged, quadruple-edged sword. Because what it means to me might not mean the same to you. Now, on the second subject is the famous words of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this is the easiest double-edged sword of words that I've ever could fathom. In America, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness at the cost of one's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, how does that make sense? And I'm not talking about like, oh, well, life, like pro-life, like no abortions. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the broadest spectrum available. Let's start on life. We have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Supposed to. Now with life, it comes at the cost of your life. Because say you get in detrimental health. Well, now you gotta pay all this fucking money to not even necessarily be cured. A lot of the time, especially with like cancers, AIDS, shit like that. I'm not saying there's some conspiracy against, with the big pharma companies, blah blah blah, they know how to cure cancer and they don't. But it is a proven fact that the doctors and everybody else make more money treating a disease or an illness or what have you than they do curing it. That seems like a collective greed. It seems like I feel like there are some doctors that want to help people and do that, but they can't at the cost of their reputation and their life and their pursuit of their happiness. So let's go on to liberty. Now, how would liberty be on a double-edged sword? Well, that's an easy one. The very definition of liberty, just like I was getting into with justice. Everybody's got their own definition of that. I don't know how I would define that. I mean, I live pretty simply overall. I take care of my son. That's basically the only thing that really fucking matters to me. That, I'm on the 3 things of shit you don't fuck with is my son, number 1, my money, number 2, and number 3, which can coincide with number 2, is how can I put this? Not my ability to make money, but like my livelihood. You don't fuck with my money, my livelihood, or my son. And in that sense, if that gets fucked with, then my definition of justice changes swiftly. Because if someone fucks with my son, shit's going down. If somebody fucks with my money, and I don't just mean like a few $100s, like if I was raped of everything I could ever make, I'm gonna say I made $2,000 a month, and I was getting raped for $1,800 of that, so I would live on $200 a month with no help, no nothing. That's fucking with my money.